Welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is being life. What is life like if our identity is who I am, is life expressing itself through this unique vessel? It opens up a whole new world, and we get to explore that a bit today. But before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells and all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, all your molecules, all your electrons, and creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together, vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling when you stop. And allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables us to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So, identity is something that we cling to in oh so many ways, to know who we are. And we talk about identity a lot. The thing about it is that the identity that we cling to is a function of the past, pretty much purely, typically. And we tend to cling to it as a static thing, like this is who I am, and that's fixed, and it will remain fixed throughout our lives. But what if instead we looked at identity as process, as an ongoing transformation? And what if we were to identify with who I am is life expressing itself through this unique vessel? What if I'm life expressing itself, its intelligence, through this unique vessel with its unique capabilities? And what happens then to our experience of living? So I was having this conversation with a dear friend yesterday, and they said, well, if I'm life expressing itself, then every moment is life expressing itself, like having a bath or watching TV or changing the world or any number of other things, going for a walk in nature, connecting to our four-legged and feathered and the scaled friends. So what occurs as we step into that place, and I invite you to engage in that activity, could we call it? Because what happens is there's an expansiveness and an allowing for life to emerge. And there's also at least for me, there's a greater ability to release the past. If I am the constant inflow, outflow of life's expression, and even if I am ruminating on the past, that's also an expression of life through this form, right? And so rather than resisting and judging ourselves, what occurs anyway for me in this inquiry, it's an ongoing inquiry. What occurs for me is there's a softening, there's a greater acceptance, there's a greater ease and flow. I'm not having to fight anymore. I don't have to prove anything, because I don't have to hold on to these ideas of who I think I am or how I think I should be. That I get to be more of who I am in this unique expression, whatever that is. And whether it's a trick of mind or a shift of actual being, my sense is that it brings us closer to essence. It brings us closer to our authentic expression. It brings us closer to our foundational nature of who we are, as this unique vessel, and if we are an expression of life, then we're not bounded by the limitations of our ideas about who we are. We can move beyond those ideas of who we are because it's emergent. And there's tremendous freedom in that. Good morning, Rosalind. Welcome. So good to have you here with us this morning. And welcome to everybody else who's here and joining us as well. And if you are by any chance putting in comments and I'm not responding to them, just know it's because I don't see them. So you might want to go to the Enlightened World Network Facebook page or YouTube channel, and you can put your comments in there. But we're talking about being life rather than doing life. And if we look at that distinction, so many of us do life. Like there's so much for us to do, so much that needs fixing. So much that is wrong with the way things are. And we were talking about turbulence of change yesterday. And I think that this is something that happens cyclically in nature and in civilizations. And we're seeing a lot of that kind of change and upheaval happening. And if we can be life's expression, it kind of allows for all of that transformation. It was very interesting, actually, in this same conversation that I had yesterday, that we were talking about change and the turbulence of change, which was yesterday's topic. And this person said, it's so interesting in all my years and working in the outdoors and working in transformation, even that the experience was to manage change, to pretend that there wasn't turbulence, to just move through that. rather than recognizing that is really a dynamic of life and of change, that there is this turbulence, that it's kind of unavoidable, part of the definition of things. And another effect of being life is that we become inseparable from the rest of life, that we become part of a much greater tapestry. And there's a unity, like a oneness about that is more the truth of how things are, is that we are all inextricably connected. The separation, the notion of separation that we have is an illusion. It's a construct. And this was such a great conversation because we covered a lot of ground. But one of the things that we were talking about was science and rationality. And we've spoken about that here recently as well. But that this notion of rationality is a willful separation from our emotions. And there's a judgment inherent in the deifying, I'll say, of rationality in our culture that is denigrating emotion and dismissing it as its own intelligence. And so that separation is very much the same kind of separation that we as individuals create for ourselves as well. We separate ourselves from ourselves by this notion of rationality versus emotion. Like we're cutting ourselves off from the thing that provides us with a moral compass, in which is a sense of connection, and emotion is a part of that sense of connection. That's how we can calibrate. And we separate ourselves with these notions of identity. The way that we recognize who we are is by comparing ourselves to others. If I'm in this individuated identity, as opposed to being life expressing itself, then I'm comparing myself. It's me and everybody else, me and us and them kind of thing, right? That separation is foundational to that sort of identity. When we can, because we'll fight to the death to defend our beliefs or our stance, or against something that is a perceived threat, rather than coming to that thing from a place of unity. Like, well, the assumption of this otherness is there, and enemy, this polarity that we live in so much. Whereas when we move through this space of being life expressing itself, we're part of something much bigger. We're in service to something much bigger than ourselves. And what's coming to mind is when I was talking to someone about my vision of an eco park, uh, and I had all these ideas of what it was going to be like. And this person said to me, "Well, what would nature want?" And it blew my mind. It kind of blew me right off track. It made me completely rethink the way that I was conceptualizing this thing, and to really be looking at what does life want? What does life want as we live as its expression? And so I was thinking about calling this morning's conversation permission. But what when we allow ourselves to be life expressing itself, we can give ourselves permission to find our passions. And there is a dissolving of all these things we thought we were. And that can be very uncomfortable. That was part of our conversation as well. It can be very uncomfortable because we're kind of betwixt and between, trying to find that balance that we've been speaking about lately. But to allow that we are in service to life as a dynamic, vital process offers an entry into a different way of being, I think. And that's really where we have the opportunity to transform what's happening here, not by doing, but a collective shift of being that brings us into greater connection and awareness and allows us to move into emergence rather than out of the past. So another part of this wonderful, wonderful conversation was talking about how looking at the way the world is right now, it's hard to imagine how it could get fixed without just blowing it to bits, kind of thing, right? Blow it up so that we can start over. And that idea is based on the experience of the past. That idea is based on this polarity thinking that is very much black and white, right and wrong, and very predictable, but it's only based on the past. And the thing is that we are moving into different spaces, that there are more and more people in conversation about waking up, about unity, about connection, about generosity, recognizing that the systems that we've established aren't working and are headed, are destroying us essentially. But it's like there's this rising tide of consciousness and awareness. And it's very possible that we will reach the tipping point with that, where the will for some of these systems, the will for our existing paradigms shifts, and then the paradigms also shift. And I think we can see this, like I see this over time. When I first became vegetarian when I was about, I don't know if it was 12 or 13, 14. And when there was nothing for vegetarians at a restaurant for sure. You go to a restaurant and what you could get that was vegetarian was a wedge of iceberg lettuce, um, or green beans from a can that had been way overcooked. I mean, there was not a lot available that was vegetarian. And now you can go anywhere, including fast food chains, and get vegetarian food. So that's a big transformation. And people talking about plant-based diets and all kinds of options that didn't exist then in an accessible manner. So that in itself is a shift of consciousness. Yoga was something that was really obscure, and now you can, any gym that gives any kinds of classes as yoga classes pretty much, and we can find it all over the place, and it's accepted. And so with yoga is about presence, really. It's not just exercise, it's about presence. And so that is becoming more of a cultural conversation. Mindfulness is becoming more of a cultural conversation, with corporations incorporating mindfulness trainings as part of their offerings to employees. So what's happening is that there is a shift, and the shift is happening over time. And as that displacement of old ideas with new, as that displacement is occurring, it may be that it's gaining some velocity. And the turbulence, the old systems, the old paradigms are fighting like hell to hold their ground as they are being dismantled, as they are dissolving, as they are crumbling. And in the fight to not be crumbling, they're asserting themselves even more strongly, because it's like a dog that's cornered. Could be a really gentle animal, but if you corner that dog, it's going to come out with fangs. And that's what's happening. I mean, if we look, we see a lot of fangs, and on both sides. And as long as we talk about both sides, we're still in the polarity awareness. We're still in polarity consciousness. And there needs, what we get to do is to be creating something new that comes from a space of unity, that comes from a space of integrated being, body, mind, spirit, integrated being. Even just saying body, mind, spirit is kind of saying that they're separate, but they're not. They're inseparable. They're inseparable. So it's funny, when I was a kid, I guess at about 11 or 12 years old, I had my first bout with alopecia. There were like quarter-size areas of my head where my hair fell out, before all of it fell out, much, much later. But at that time, it was called alopecia nervosa. And it was as a result of stress. It was defined as resulting from stress. And I was being told that it's psychosomatic. And so what's really, really interesting is that what that meant at the time was that it was all in my head. Well, the fact is, I had a physiological representation. There was a physiological thing happening. So it wasn't something that was made up, because there were physiological measurable symptoms. And to me, what that is an indication of is clearly there's no separation. There's no mind, body, spirit separation. It is, we are one thing, one, and that is life. We are life, and we can't separate who I am from the body. It's not a meat sack that I live in. It is the vehicle through which I live also, whatever that I is. This whole dynamic is the vessel through which life has its unique expression. So we can recognize, there's so many false foundations, false premises that we operate from in our culture, in our upbringing. Like this notion of rationality and emotionality, and one being better than the other, and demonizing emotionality, for example, and using that as a means of domination and control. But anyway, to just, as we move into being life, we get to allow ourselves greater integration, to recognize that all of it is an expression of life. And there's profound freedom within that, and permission then to really be who we are, without having to prove, without having to do anything. And then we have the opportunity to have our doing come from deep, authentic inspiration. So that's it for today. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I invite you to please like and follow the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel, and my YouTube channel. All the links are available in the description. And as always, I'm just so deeply grateful for the opportunity to have these morning musings together, to be exploring life and meaning and all that good stuff. So until next time, so much love.